Welcome to the Daily Exchange. We're here talking about security tokens in 2019 with Ben Hauser from Hyperlink Technology. We'll see you guys right after that. All right, guys, welcome back. We're here. We're back talking with Ben Hauser from Hyperlink Technology. Welcome to the Daily Exchange, Ben.
Thank you.
It's good to have you, man. Dialing in from Kiev in the Ukraine, having a fun time. What's it like over there right now? Is it cold, hot, warm, temperate?
The winter just finished, and we're seeing some sun. Everybody's starting to go outside without coats on. It's not so bad. Yeah.
So Ben is from Hyperlink Technology, and they have developed a protocol for issuing, governing, and trading security tokens. It's on the Ethereum blockchain. It's called the Secured Financial Protocol, aka it is short for SFT. We'll talk about SFT throughout this interview, and it's an open source project which simplifies the regulatory and reporting hurdles associated with security markets. I think, Joel, we've got a little image here of Hyperlink. It hopes to, the SFT will improve liquidity in security tokens by opening them up to global audiences of investors that have not obviously had access to that in the past. Security tokens are a very hot topic right now, obviously, and there are other protocols out there like Polymath or Securitize to foster development. There are also exchanges like the Malta Digital Exchange, Overstock's T0, which is actually going to be on the show in March, guys. So we'll look out for that. Do subscribe and follow us to see that. It's exciting for the time for the space, obviously. Ben, before we get into that, and I think it's really important, can you tell us what is a security token?
Well, security tokens are simply digital representations of securities, be they equity, such as stock, debt, such as bonds, derivatives like stock options or warrants, that exist natively on a blockchain.
Very cool. And what is the difference between a security token and a utility token?
Well, the key difference is that a security token actually represents an investment or a debt that's owed to you and comes with all of the legal protections that would come to even if it wasn't a token. Whereas a utility token is intended to capture the network effect or the value of networks that frankly often don't even exist. And they confer no investor benefits because you're not considered to be an investor.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so tell us, Ben, give us an overview of SFT, the protocol. What's it all about?
Yeah, so SFT is basically a set of smart contracts. It's built on Solidity, on the Ethereum blockchain. And the idea of SFT is that it enables the compliant issue of equity and debt-based securities. And so our big focus is on minimization of trust. So we're attempting to place as much logic around transfers, permissioning, identity on chain as possible.
Okay, really cool. And, I guess when you set out to build the protocol, what was the big problem you were trying to solve?
Well, in the current system, you've got a lot of these different legacy providers, right? And they're all disconnected. They're all doing their own thing, and information has to be passed from point A to point B. And every time you have two systems communicating like that, you open yourself up to issues due to maliciousness, negligence, collusion. It's a nightmare. We're operating on all of these systems that were built anywhere from the end of World War II to the end of the Cold War, and they're collectively managing all of the money in the world. And we've now finally got this technology that we think can sort of reinvent this space and make it more transparent, make it work quicker. We can move away from the idea of a company won't be evil to a company can't be evil because it's enforced programmatically. So that's really what we're trying to solve.
Okay, and this is, I guess, what sort of is being labeled the DeFi space or decentralized finance, which is really cool. And I think that's great. Tell us, there's Polymath, there's Securitize, Swarm, and some other protocols out there. What's Hyperlink? How does that compare, and how is that different?
The two things that I think really set us apart are, for one, we're not building something that's powered by a utility token. So we haven't created an ERC20 out of thin air and then sold it to raise a bunch of money and finding ways to force you to use that token or to spend that token if you want to use our platform. And then the other thing that we're not doing is we're not trying to build any sort of walled garden or silo. Our protocol is fully open source. There's nothing about it that we are keeping proprietary. So we definitely intend to use it, but we're not building it in a way that we're kind of the gatekeepers and that other companies that might be competitors can't possibly use it. We want to build something to foster an entire ecosystem, to have a network effect. You know, if in a year a direct competitor to us is using our protocol, I'm going to see that as a huge win, because it means that we've built something that the community is actually using. And I think having two different groups side by side on it, even if they're competitors, the value to it is greater than if we're each kind of doing our own thing over here and over there, because that's just reinventing what we already have.
That's really cool. So tell us, you talked about this, SFT doesn't have a utility token. How are you funding the protocol?
Well, I mean, we're a technology provider at heart, right? So we're going to offer a branded as well as a white label solution that employs our protocol to be used for issuance and governance, mostly focusing on private equity to start. And revenue will come from deployment, management, custom contract production, auditing of the contracts, consultancy of companies that want to use the protocol.
Very cool. So it's a bit like you've got the IBM model, which we were at last week at their big conference, and they give away the software open source, and then they provide all the solutions and all the support around that to make their money. Is that similar to how it works?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a large company could just take the code that we've released open source and take an internal team and figure out how it works and build something over top of it. But a lot of the time, why not just hire the guys that actually built it, that already have a deep understanding of how it works, and take their white label solution? It's easier.
So now coming back to, I guess, the solution, the SFT itself, the protocol, how would the average trader sort of interact with SFT?
I mean, in an ideal world, SFT would integrate into a decentralized exchange, and any trader who has received an on-chain identity check will be able to connect to the DEX and buy and sell tokens, and it would only be, slightly more difficult than using a current exchange. But in reality, we're dealing with private equity here, and private equity isn't illiquid simply for a lack of markets. It's illiquid because, for one, issuers don't necessarily want it trading everywhere, and because there are strict regulatory requirements around it. So tokenization isn't going to change this overnight, unfortunately. For VCs and big funds that are already active in this space, I think this is going to certainly ease the requirements, but we have a long way to go in terms of regulation before we'll actually see security tokens trading on Binance. So for your average trader, at least in these early days, it's not the fabled holy grail that some people are holding it up to be.
And I think one of the big things with security tokens is this regulatory component. How are you sort of addressing that with the protocol? How are you addressing, say, a token holder buying some sort of security or not buying some sort of security? Can you tell us a bit about that and how you're solving for that?
Absolutely. There's kind of two broad approaches. So you can either handle everything on chain or off chain. So if it's off chain, basically every call has to be routed through either some sort of authority permissioning node, or you have to receive a hash from the issuer that you include in the transaction that says that it's okay. And if it's on chain, then everything is being done in smart contracts. And if a transaction can't go through, it doesn't meet the requirements of the contract, it just gets blocked. So we think that the on-chain approach is superior because it's again what I was talking about with minimizing trust, right? If your transaction is blocked by an off-chain approach, you don't know, did I actually not meet the requirements? or was I just blocked because maybe there's, some sort of market interest? The person that blocked me wanted to take that trade instead. We think that everything should be happening on chain wherever possible, just because it allows everyone to look at it and understand exactly why everything is happening. So that's there are very few places in our protocol that we purely just rely to some off-chain check to see if something can happen.
Okay, very cool. Now, you guys are part of what's called the Millbrook Accord, which was a set of standards for security tokens, and was signed in Queenstown by Hyperlink, the NEM Foundation, Overstock, Gibraltar Stock Exchange, to name a few. In Queenstown, I believe in New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken, which is kind of cool. The Verified Token Framework. Can you tell us a bit about this, about the Millbrook Accord?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was signed in Queenstown at an event put on by the Techemy Group, and I learned firsthand that New Zealand is really cold that time of year. The Millbrook Accord was spearheaded by Jeff Pulver, and the idea was really to just bring together a wide range of industry participants at every level, and so we can just kind of share ideas and work towards a kind of common approach towards security tokens. We put forth the idea of cooperation a lot. Like, until we actually build a playing field, we can't possibly compete against each other. So we need to work together in these early days to grow the industry enough that we can have competing business models.
Okay, very cool. Now, yesterday we saw in Brazil, the Brazilian investment bank BTG Pactual is planning to raise $15 million through a security token offering. The CEO of the bank said the technology associated with the offering allows us to be a pioneer in providing access to asset classes that have historically been difficult for global retail investors to access. We are constantly exploring innovative ways to promote, democratize, and encourage the development of financial and capital markets. So I think this is the first time I think an investment bank has done a security token offering. Ben, what sort of industries do you see initially really being active in the security token market?
The Brazilian project is really interesting, and so it's essentially a REIT, right? They're selling, I think, distressed packages of mortgages. And so REITs seem to be a really popular one in these early days because they really just lend themselves to tokenization very well. I also think that technology companies in this first iteration of security tokens, they're big. They're more aware of the blockchain space in general. They tend to be attractive to the sort of investor that's interested in crypto. And then I think as well, existing private companies that are not necessarily looking to even raise capital, but more just looking to reduce compliance costs or automate cap table management, they'll be attracted to the space.
Very cool. And I guess for security tokens right now, there's a few hurdles in getting them live. What do you sort of see as the main breakthroughs that are needed to really get them trading and get them moving and become like almost like the utility token space? Where are we at and what do we need to go there, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's still really early days. And I think the big thing that we need is clear regulatory approval for this, right? So in so many places, what we're kind of trying to do is navigate around these old laws or find really creative ways to kind of wrap equity in an SPV or a trust wrapper so we can issue some right to participation, but it's far abstracted away from what we're actually talking about. And so I think a big step in breaking through will actually be having a government somewhere say, no, this is exactly how you can issue equity on a blockchain. To that end, we're really excited about what's going on in Wyoming. The push there being made by Caitlin Long and others is really impressive. They've passed regulations towards doing book entry securities, and they're working towards a certificated shares model. I think stuff like that is going to be really important towards pushing the industry forward. Because once we have more clear regulatory approval, then we will, I think, start to see bigger institutions moving in. JP Morgan's announcement, JPM coin, that came out of nowhere. That was exciting.
Yeah.
as we see more stuff like that coming in, like at some point, I think we're just going to kind of have this tipping point. We're all going to say, whoa, when did that happen? And at that point, they won't even be security tokens anymore. They're just going to be securities.
Yep. Makes sense. Now, we had the SEC settle its charges against Gladius this week, which we had an ICO in 2017. It sold a security token, which has now been classified, a utility token, which has now been classified as a security. It was obviously quite lucky. Following the release of the Dow report, which found that security laws may apply to ICOs, maybe even a lot more ICOs could be, reclassified as even all of them being securities. It gave a lot of ICOs, I guess, a bit of amnesty. But I think, given this SEC crackdown, and they're looking retroactively at actually punishing these ICOs, do you think that security tokens will replace utility tokens in the future?
I think some people at the SEC might argue that most utility tokens already are security tokens. And I mean, that said, they're very different, right? I don't know if replace would be the right word. Utility tokens are attempting to capture the value of the network, whereas security tokens, this is actual ownership. It's like there is some crossover, but I think replace is too strong of a word because I think it's still sort of in its own vein. I think utility tokens were kind of this little oddity that happened, and we're going to one day look back on that and go, wow, that was crazy. But security tokens, it's just the next step in something that's already existed for hundreds of years.
Okay, and I guess the legacy systems that exist right now, do you think they're going to build their own blockchains? Like, how do you think they're going to get affected by the new security token market?
I mean, ultimately, I think they'll have to adapt or die, but I don't think they're stupid. You don't get that big and not be aware of what's going on. And so I think that a lot of them probably already are working on projects, but ultimately my feeling is that a lot of them are going to favor a more permissioned model. When you're building a permissioned chain and you're keeping everything off chain, you're not really disintermediating, or you're just kind of converting the intermediaries into a new form where you used to have custodial banks or CSDs. Now they become trusted signer nodes. And so I think that that's kind of what we're going to see from these existing institutions. And my hope is that as awareness spreads about this, the general public will be more interested in actual disintermediation as opposed to just converting the name of the old guard.
Okay. So you're predicting some changes there, Ben, I guess. Now in Europe, I know you're based currently in Europe right now, physically as well. We've seen the German government right now is reaching out to talk with a number of players and to tap into the potential of blockchain technology, they're saying. Tap into the potential, which is great. And then Germany's capital, Berlin, has about 170 blockchain and cryptocurrency startups. What do you think the attitude of blockchain is like in, I guess, the European governments and in Europe in general?
I mean, I think there's a lot of interest, and it really varies country by country. What you mentioned in Germany is very exciting. Just a few days ago, Germany approved the first prospectus for a security token offering, and they said that they have 3 more in the pipeline. And I mean, they are by far the largest market in Europe. So that's really exciting, because if BaFin says it's okay, then that's, I think, a huge step towards the greater ECB saying it's okay. You already have Malta like really pushing to innovate, sometimes almost moving a little too quickly, I think, in the eyes of the rest of Europe. Switzerland has been doing a lot of really interesting stuff. FINMA recently put out classifications on different types of crypto, which I think they're kind of setting the first steps towards developing regulation around all of this. So the regulators are definitely aware of it. I don't think they're inherently opposed to it. They just, I mean, a lot of people lost a lot of money in the last couple of years. And the last thing anyone wants to do is endorse something that ends up being a scam in essence, So we're kind of facing, I think, more resistance than we would have if we didn't have what happened in the last 2 years.
Okay. And what do you think Europe's attitude is right now to cryptocurrencies? Yeah, like I guess a lot of countries are pro, a lot of countries aren't. What are you sort of seeing on the ground there?
It's getting better for sure, but we still have a long way to come, right? Like, I mean, Malta is making huge progress, but at the end of the day, I think like banking is still sort of your ultimate litmus test, and it is still very difficult to get a bank to touch crypto money here in Europe. So we're not there yet.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the market, sort of zooming out a bit. You know, yesterday we had Elon Musk, sorry, not yesterday, but just recently, he was on a podcast. Bitcoin's rallied over $4,000. It's pulled back a little bit now. And we've had crypto, obviously, he's saying, Elon Musk on ARK Invest podcast is saying, crypto is a far better way to transfer value than a piece of paper, that's for sure. Which is, you know, pretty intense. We've got Jack Dorsey, he's talking a lot about this, about Bitcoin, integrating it into the Lightning Network, into Twitter. We've got, all sorts of bits and pieces in the market. What's your sort of view right now on the market?
It does feel like there's a lot of optimism starting to happen, but I don't know. I'm still skeptical that we're through the worst here, you know? And honestly, these bear markets are the time to just put your head down and build things so that when it does turn around, you're in place. And so, I mean, I spent a lot of 2017 staring at charts. This year, not so much. I'm more looking at code than caring about the prices. Okay.
Now, I want to talk briefly, because I know you're working on the Ethereum blockchain. And there's a bit of noise happening right now in Ethereum. Do you think Ethereum's forming tribes?
Yeah. So we've had this incident recently where Afri, part of the Serenity group, he basically said to everybody, like, you know, Polkadot is what Serenity is supposed to be. Prove me wrong. And the community kind of went crazy on him. And he recently backed away from social media. He said he's completely done with working on Ethereum. And it's been interesting to watch. Not very good. You know, people are kind of polarizing and taking sides. And it kind of reminds me of some of the things that I see in like the beginnings of Bitcoin maximalism. You know, I was big into Bitcoin, but I kind of got driven away by the absolutism and the whole idea of like, it's either my way or it's wrong. You know, everything that's not Bitcoin is a scam. And what I love about the Ethereum community is the acceptance, and everybody's just, you know, let's build shit. It's fun. Let's do stuff. And so it does worry me when I start seeing people taking sides like this and getting really political and heated debates on Twitter. And I hope that doesn't become more of a thing, because it would be a shame to see such a beautiful community descend into tribalism like that.
That's true. And then I guess, you know, with this Polkadot being better than Serenity, that's like a pretty spicy topic right now on Twitter as well. Do you have any views on that?
I mean, they're speculating about things that are still being built, right? It's yeah, I think that we should just focus on actually creating these things and then put them out in the market and let the users decide.
Makes
There's
sense.
no need to take sides on stuff that's currently in development.
Okay. Now, I guess what's coming up for Hyperlink? Tell us, you know, what's the SFT? What's the roadmap? What should people look out for? What should they, subscribe and join your Twitter channel for?
Yeah, we're just putting the finishing touches on the actual protocol and building up the front end over top of it, finalizing our business plan. We intend to, somewhere in the next couple of months, move into full-on marketing and moving into the next phase of the business. We didn't want to start by going on a roadshow like we see a lot of companies do, and so we really want to make sure everything is perfect build-wise before we start doing too much promotion. But we're just about done, and so I think in the next 6 months you'll start to see a lot of us.
Very cool. Now, we'll ask everyone on the show, Ben, a question, and that is, what do you think the price of Bitcoin will be in US dollars at midnight 2018 when the clock strikes 31st of December. And I am drinking my soda water because I'm not a drinker. What do you think the price of Bitcoin will be?
Let's go with 9,001 US dollars.
9,001. I love that answer. That's great.
Specifically, it's over 9,000.
That's great stuff. Ben, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for giving everyone an update on what you're working on and where you're going. I really wish you the best of luck, and everyone in the community here as well wishes you the best of luck. Guys, thank you for joining us on the Daily Exchange.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that's Ben Hauser of Hyperlink Technology with his SFT protocol and the great things they're doing there. Guys, do subscribe. Remember, we have got some other security token platforms coming on the show in March as well with Overstock and T0. Do check that out. Do subscribe and do follow us. And we'll see you guys next week. Yeah.